Recording in progress.
Okay, we'll get started with our meeting tonight. We want to welcome everyone to the West Haven City Council meeting. Today is October 2nd, 2024. It's 6:01, and my name's Rob Vanderwood. I'm the mayor of West Haven, and I'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with our opening ceremonies. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be by council member Call, and our prayer or moment of silence will be from council member Dixon.
Please stand and repeat the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our kind and gracious Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be here tonight on behalf of West Haven City. We're thankful to be in the governing council and ask you to help us as we make decisions that we might be able to look at all aspects and make the correct one. We're grateful especially for those who protect our homes and our EMS and public safety. We ask you to bless them and their families as they have hard jobs. We ask you to help our citizens and to make sure that we are safe. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilmember Collin and Councilmember Dixon. Appreciate that very much. We'll move on to our third item on our agenda is our public presentation. Residents attending this meeting will be allotted 2 minutes to express a concern or ask a question about any issue that is not on the agenda. No action can or will be taken on any issues that are presented. Do we have anyone that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4. Our upcoming events. We have our senior lunch bunch, October 23rd. That'll be at 11:30 a.m. and it's at the Barn Green Farm Community Center. And we've been holding it there. It's been a great event, and we're getting more and more people that are attending. So if you're thinking about coming, feel free to jump in on that. You just got to be a little bit older, a little gray around the edge. Dumpster Days is coming up. That's a big popular event in West Haven. That's October 24th through the 26th. That's for our residents, and there are some rules that apply with the dumping of certain items, and they'll be marked where you can and can't dump certain items. I know the green dump stuff you do over by the arena, and the other will be over in the parking lot by the Ball Diamonds. We also have our pumpkin walk. It'll be on October 28th, and that will start at 6:30, and I believe go till about 8 o'clock, somewhere in there, or until everybody is done getting candy.
It is, and can I just say, it was originally a Thursday, the Thursday before. We changed it to the Monday, so it is now Monday, October 28th instead of the 24th, so.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Just a change.
And we appreciate the Youth Council and Councilmember Dixon for helping with that, and all our folks that are helping with the events committee. We also want to, we have our Wasatch Choice Fall Workshop. That's October 30th. It's down the road a little ways, but it's at 4 p.m. at the Roy Municipal Center. And the address is on there, and if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to get in touch with the office here. Any other upcoming events from the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, our council updates. Do we have any updates directly from the council?
Just a quick update on beautification committee. We had some September winners for Yard of the Month. Those have been awarded the Hosleys and the Cooks, and really nice yards, and they were presented with some gift certificates. So should be seeing that in social media. So
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I
You guys are doing
had
a
a
great
question.
job.
Oh, sorry. I had a question for the arts department. Did they actually publicize who had won the quilts? And I had people ask me who had won the quilt, and I hadn't ever seen that on the Facebook, but I didn't know whether I just missed it or not.
The ladies that chaired the quilt event did not want that to be a competition.
Oh,
So there was a public choice
right.
vote, and that's all that there was on that one.
Okay.
Not a, but the gallery does have winners, and if you want those published, I can ask those to
All
get that
right.
out.
Thank you.
But yeah,
I think if they're going to that much trouble, I think that would be awesome
okay,
too. So.
sure.
Is there a possibility we can get an update on the Arts Council and the festival that was held? Just tell the community what took place.
Yeah, we had the arts festival last weekend or two ago. It was a great success. We added the quilt show this year, which was awesome. We filled the entire chambers here around the seating and all the way down the hall, both sides of the hall. So they had a lot of entries in that. The same with the gallery. I think we had a lot of art put in for that, more adult this year, which was nice. But we also had a lot of youth participate in that as well. We had games this year, which was new. It was fun for the kids to be able to do. And our chalk artist was a legit chalk artist. She's amazing. So she came and chalked and did some instruction, and the kids could learn, and adults as well. So that was a fun event. That was, I think, well chalked. I don't know if staff saw it at all the next day, but there were a lot of squares. A lot of people came out and drew.
Okay, it was well chalked.
It was well chalked.
Well chalked.
Yeah,
Like that
I've
term.
learned a lot from our chalk artists this year.
It was a real fun event, I think, and a lot of people, what I heard from the community mostly was that they're anxious to expand on it. They want to see more of it and have a lot more vendors and a lot more people come out. So I think as we grow on this and we'll hopefully advertise it a little bit more next year to get more people out, but I think it's a great event for the city.
We did have 5 vendors that were a complete no-show. So that was disappointing because we didn't fill the space like we had before.
Yeah, it was still good though. Really good show.
Yes, it was.
Okay, anything else from the council members? Okay. We'll move on to item 6 on here, action on consent agenda. Item A is for our city council minutes for the meeting held September 18th of 2024. Item B was for Weber County Sheriff for $495,949. Item C is for Castle Creek Homes for $267,968.80. Item D is for Advanced Paving and Construction for $284,232.97. Item E is for Nelson Homes, $53,948.80. And that's for the pond release. And item F is for the Nelson Homes, $29,530.18 for the Poulter Pond release number 2. So those are our action on consent agenda. Any questions from the council? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion, excuse me, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through F.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the council? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this. Councilmember Dixon?
Aye.
Councilmember Morse?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab?
Aye.
Councilmember Call?
Aye.
And Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries on our consent agenda. Thank you. We move to item 7. This is for our public hearing for the purpose of soliciting public input on opening the current 2024-2025 budget to make certain adjustments. I think if we could maybe just get, I don't know how many people we have here that will want to speak to it, but maybe just get a prelude a little bit from the city manager, Sean.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 3 funds that are being proposed for budget amendments, which include the general fund, the capital fund, and the storm drain fund. And I'm happy to go over all of them, but as a starting point, I would just draw your attention to, I think, some significant adjustments. And I would also say that part of the budget process envisions and anticipates that there are going to be amendments over the course of the year. You know, the budgeting process is our best estimate of what we expect for revenues and expenses, but there are things that come up throughout the fiscal year that require us to revisit the budget. So this is a normal part of the budgeting process. The first item I want to draw your attention to under the general fund is the treasurer. We have a contract for services with Child Richards, CPA and advisor, and they provide the technical expertise relative to accounting, from helping and functioning as the city's treasurer. And I would also just say, as a finance director, I mean, they really help direct the city's finances. And to that end, they prepare the yearly financial statements, which are audited. And we have a flat fee arrangement with them. And as part of the process, Child Richards has tracked the time that they've spent in the recent years, and it has exceeded their billable hours that they would typically charge. So currently, the flat fee is $60,000, and billing came up last year to $85,000. And what they would propose is that we consider increasing the fee to $75,000. And so that would be for the city and the district. And one thing I would mention relative to the city and the district, currently right now, all the expense relative to their professional service fee is borne by the city. We have an interlocal agreement with the district. The district bears the complete burden of credit cards for the city for its garbage. And so what's anticipated is that we would amend the interlocal agreement just to clarify that, you know, that those two expenses offset at present time. They estimate about 15% of the work that they do, they being Child Richards, is associated with the district's, work. And so that's one specific item that I wanted to draw your attention to. Another item is credit card fees. They were underestimated, and in some cases, I think there was a transaction recently that highlighted, the issue of credit card fees, where a builder came in and used the credit card, and for $100,000 of building permit fees, and the actual credit card fees amounted to about $4,000 just with that one transaction. So I think this requires at some point a conversation about how we want to handle credit cards. I gave some options in the budget agenda or budget memo that talks about different ways we could go about looking at credit cards and approaching how we pay for credit card fees. So that's at this point, it's just proposed that we increase that line item slightly. So the other item that I would draw your attention to is in the capital projects fund. There is an obligation to reimburse Staker Park to Castle Creek Homes. It was not known to me when the budget was prepared. Unlike the way that we account for impact fees that are reimbursed or used for a specific project like Green Farms, there's a specific line item in the budget that's attributed to impact fees and Green Farms. There wasn't one for Staker Park, so I only recently learned about the obligation to reimburse. So when the city accepted the park and the maintenance of it, it triggered that requirement to essentially reimburse them for 125 single-family lot impact fees. And so that is now in the budget. The other item that we talked about at the last city council meeting was the Windsor Park. We were able to receive some really competitive pricing with the first phase of developing Windsor Park, which is primarily attributed to or focused on infrastructure, as you know. And so with some of those remaining funds, what was discussed and contemplated at the last council meeting was including and constructing a restroom facility with this first phase. And so what's being proposed is a $51,000 increase that would allow for the park to receive a restroom at this point. The other thing that I would mention to you is Green Farms Fishing Pier. And there was a change order that is in the amount of $26,000, which was attributed to some infilled realization that they needed to actually drive the screws that actually secure the pier further down into the earth. And so with that was a change order in the amount of $26,000. And lastly, in the capital projects fund, I would also draw your attention to the Green Farms Park Impact Fee. It's for the Barn Community Center, and the way that it was, excuse me, written in the master development agreement, the third master development agreement between the city and Nelson Homes, was that there was a 50-50 split of the expenses. The initial budget envisioned that the city and Nelson Homes would spend $275,000 for a $550,000 cap. That has been exceeded, and so there's some more expenses that are being finalized currently. The mayor did ask me just moments ago before the meeting start when some of these draw requests were processed. I can tell you that draw request number 1 occurred before February and I've been here for draw request number 2, 3, and 4. Draw request number 5 is forthcoming, and I anticipated, as it related to the budget, that with the project being substantially complete in June, that the expenses were essentially going to be wrapped up in last year's fiscal budget, but there are some carryovers that will occur in this year, and so there is a proposed amendment of essentially $95,000. Right now, they've estimated the expense at $71,000. I put a margin in there just to make sure that there were sufficient funds. So that request would be on a future agenda for the city council. And then lastly, in the storm drain fund, the other item to bring your attention to, and this is again something that we didn't anticipate when the budget was prepared, is a impact fee, a reimbursement agreement for system improvements. So Fairhaven, which is being developed by Ivory Homes, has project improvements for storm drain, and rather than, and those project improvements are proportionate to the impact of that development on the storm drain system, but there's the opportunity to upsize some of that infrastructure to service development outside of their project, and for that reason, the city would enter into this reimbursement agreement. The costs are estimated to be about $16,000 for that upsize.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that review. I think we'll move on to our public hearing. Is there any questions before we move on to that from anyone? And we can discuss it after that. So ready for a motion for our public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on opening this up to the public hearing? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are in public hearing right now. If there's anyone that would like to come up and discuss, please feel free to do so.
Emily, do you have the timer ready?
Emily, she's been working on it.
She's ready. She's definitely ready. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8 on here. We'll go ahead and close our public hearing. I need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on closing public hearing? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now out of public hearing for that discussion. We'll move on to item 8, action on public hearing for the ordinance 32-2024, amending the current 2024-2025 city budget. And of course, we're open for questions throughout that for the council. So if you have any questions. I'd like to make a recommendation on the credit card situation on here. I'm not sure it would be in the best interest of the city to just move the budget around. It seems like we could implement a policy very quickly to get that taken care of, and restrict credit card usage unless there's a 4% charge. Or people can always offer a certified check for that. But that seems like the city is really losing a lot of money on credit card costs. So that would be my recommendation, maybe to move on to try and see if it would help overall instead of trying to just up the budget for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that, if that's possible.
Yeah. So are you, pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt the proceedings. Just to be clear, are you suggesting then that we would essentially charge a convenience fee for people who use credit cards?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's important because this has been going on for a long time, actually, so, and credit cards are great to use, but people get reimbursed back on credit cards. The city, in turn, has lost quite a bit of funding over credit card usage, but people are welcome to use a credit card, but if there was a percentage added to that, I think would be beneficial. And of course, they can always bring in a certified check too, because most of the time those are either higher costs, that they have to pay out, but it's up to the council. I just felt like that was something that would help us save instead of changing the budget around to try and match the cost and funds for that.
Yeah, I'm fine with charging the 4% convenience fee. I think we see a lot of companies and agencies doing that anyway already.
I think I'd agree with that too.
But we're increasing the budget to cover what has already happened, correct?
In part, I mean, I think we can certainly create a policy. As I mentioned before, right now the district is paying the credit card fees attributed to our utilities, stormwater, and garbage. So what's in the general fund is all the other fees, and we're starting to see recreation, building permits. We're starting to take deposits via credit cards for the community center. That's $200. And so I do expect that there's some fees that we need to potentially cover, but to the mayor's point, I think we could maybe minimize that. And so we could probably delay, if you wanted to try to work on a policy first, we could delay amending the budget now relative to credit cards, and at the end of the year, just see where we stand with that line item and then make any adjustments as necessary.
Does this also apply to those that are paying their garbage online, like through bill pay?
Well, that's why I think we might need to have a coordinated discussion with the, with the community or with the district and see what their attitudes are relative to credit cards. In talking, at least on a staff level, I think I understood that they had discussed it at one point in time and felt like it was just a part of doing business and wanted to include that in their fee structure to recapture it, based upon their fee amounts. And so, anyways, we
So
could
just
revisit it.
so I'm clear, Sean, so you're saying they already factored in the credit card amount of the 4% into the fee so that we wouldn't need to add in the 4%?
Well,
Or
in theory, theoretically, I mean, that's what I'm just saying what has been explained to me, again, this was just relayed through staff, is that, they talked about it, but didn't want to charge an additional fee. And I don't know how long ago that was, and if the board still feels the same. I just feel like there's discussions that probably need to be had, some policy and some more analysis that needs to be done, and then, a conversation and ultimately a policy direction, created and given by the city council and also by the district board themselves.
I don't believe that we've changed our fee from the inception. I don't think we've added 4% to anything for our credit cards or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is if the fees had increased to cover it, then I'm fine, not charging it, but I think we ought to.
Well, that's the other option, right? We could increase some of those fees to cover it, but I think we shouldn't be taking a hit as a city just on credit card costs, because we're already, trying to keep as much income as we can to provide things for the city, and we don't want to have losses especially when you got a $4,000 loss like that one. That's a lot of money out the door. So I think there's other options that we can discuss, but that was just a recommendation. Any other discussions? On the Windsor Park for the sidewalk, they're holding back around $27,000 for the sidewalk repair. Is that just along that side street area?
I think it must be, Mayor. I got that information via an email, and it didn't have a long description, but that's how I understood it.
It doesn't seem like a very long strip there. Is there more sidewalk?
That was my question. I didn't know exactly where we're talking.
Yeah. I don't remember the street name. It's just where you come into the entrance of the park, right there on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And that sidewalk's not very long. I mean, it says repair, but it seems like that would be more than full replacement for a sidewalk. I'm not sure. Do you have any information on that, Ed, at all?
We don't.
Okay.
Have to ask Scott.
All right.
Well, I think it was Ryan. Ryan, I asked him, as a contingency, if he anticipates any contingencies that may occur through the process of Staker Parson finishing the project they've been awarded, and that was a possible contingency that he suggested might occur.
I just kind of wanted to understand that a little bit more, because I think we need to apply as much as we can towards that restroom and not hold back funding if it's not necessary, just to say we're holding it back just in case. But that seemed like a very tall order for just sidewalk repair, and I'm sure it's just where they've driven over and maybe broken it with the dump trucks. That's not a huge repair, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
That's, when I went over a while ago, I didn't pay as close attention, but it looked like that was it. I didn't see a lot of other damage. But anyway, that was just a recommendation. I think I would like to, if it's okay with the council, to maybe just see when we receive the draw request too for the community center, on just some dates to see where that all landed, so that we understand that a little better. We did go over quite a bit on this community center. So I just want to make sure that it all falls into the categories and we're not, overpaying for something. And maybe even, I'm not sure, with Nielsen Homes, I'm not sure, with their costs, when the council possibly agreed to move over, or if it was a staff decision. I'm not sure how that worked exactly, but.
Yeah, and I would tell you that I don't know if it was a conscious decision. I would tell you that I'm not aware of all the master development agreements that currently exist within the city, and I'm sorry about that. That's a shortfall on from my perspective, and so anyways, so I don't think it was a conscious decision. The challenge of the situation and the way it was structured was that we were getting invoices after they've already incurred the cost and expended it. And, in retrospect, that's a difficult, approach because it puts us at a point where they've already paid the bills and now we're essentially being made aware of it. So I did email Nilsson Homes with our last, they do provide weekly updates, and one of the suggestions that I requested to them in the last update is that they add a financial component relative to the Poulter Pond so that we have a better understanding of any expenses over what was anticipated in the agreement. And so I think it's something that I needed to work with them on to get that information more on the front end than after the expense has already been incurred.
Okay. All right. Council, do you have any other questions? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Can I just clarify that we were going to take out the 105161 out of this for now? Or is it going
It's
to
up
be?
to the council. If you want to, I think it'd be good to review it
Okay,
before we approve that part, but we can approve the rest of it if the council's okay with that.
I'm good with that. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
okay. I will make a motion that we approve ordinance 32-2024, amending the current 2024-2025 city budget with the exception of the line item 10-5161, so that we can review that at a later date.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the council on this matter? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab,
Aye.
Councilmember Call,
Aye.
and Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you for that. And thanks, Sean, for working on those items.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 9, action on letter of support for wage increase for our Weber County Sheriff's employees.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I did prepare a memo, brief as it is, that hopefully gives some insight into the potential of fiscal impact of what a letter of support may be. So I would say that, based upon previous discussions at a council meeting, I understood that there was to be a letter of support drafted for consideration that essentially would support the concept of increasing wages in order for the sheriff's department to be able to hire and recruit and retain officers. And so that the draft that you see, it was that attempt to, capture what I thought I understood the council's direction to be. Previous to wanting to put this on the agenda, I also wanted to understand, well, what were the fiscal impacts? And it was tough for them being the sheriff's office, to know exactly, because in the end, what they're proposing is doing a compensation study to compare and find what the market rate is, and then make decisions on any adjustments based upon this compensation analysis and study. And that's forthcoming, and sometime in the future, it might be as far out as a year. And so, nonetheless, I did ask them to estimate just by percentages what that might look like. And just to realize, when we increase the wage, there's also an increase into the contribution for the Utah retirement system. And so I anticipate, and at least that's what I asked in the request, is that they tell us what they felt like the increase would be with 11% increase to wages, which was what they were estimating that they would anticipate the adjustment being. And so there's a 5-year projection here. The first line is the status quo in wages, so without any changes, there's still increases that occur year after year. The 11% increase, I try to isolate what the fiscal impacts were specifically for that proposal, and the first year would be $170,000 increase, and then it would increase commensurate from there, by $9,000 the next year, and out for 5 years.
So, Sean, can I ask, is that at a full, that would be hired in full? That would be everybody that they have?
That's how I understood it.
Okay,
it'd
and
be
that's what I wondered.
yeah, it'd be adjusting
Or
what they
the
anticipate.
vacancies as well. And then also, does that include their retirement? Does that 11% include what we would expect for their retirement and their increase?
It does. Well, at least that's what I anticipate, and realize that that there's other cities that participate in as
Right.
contracted services with the sheriffs, and so this is our percentage. It doesn't necessarily represent the full amount. Realizing
Okay.
that West Haven City is the largest entity that
Well,
participates on
Aren't
the
we the
contract.
second largest? Because Weaver County utilizes Weaver County as well.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
So can I just clarify, this would be West Haven's amount right here?
Yes,
Okay.
that's how I
All right,
understand
I just
that.
wanted to make sure I understood.
Julie, if you want to take a deeper dive, Julie Stoddart, I believe that's the individual who put the projections together, and I believe you were CC'd. So those spreadsheets are available to you as well if you ever want to go back and look a little deeper into it and see the other cities and to Council Members Morse's statement, the county's share as well, I think, is listed in there. I would just say one other thing, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I do think, this issue is complicated. I do think law enforcement is becoming a more competitive industry to recruit and to retain for a lot of different reasons. So I do anticipate that there's some adjustment that is likely needed that the study will identify. I've spent some time talking to some council members about, are there other ways, to approach the issue and possibly, I think this is an issue that's really important to the city and something that we probably need to really engage, on and in understanding, how do we receive policing services? I mean, one of the things that that I think is important as our community continues to grow, we're going to need officers. And so I was looking back on some information that, previous to me being here, I was aware of. And it seemed like the Utah average for officers was 1 for every 500 people. And, it varied, different entities had different officers per thousand or per population. Yeah. And so, we need to, I think, make sure that as the city continues to grow, that our policing services grow commensurately, which, I think is going to take a commitment, financial commitment by, the city. And so I think it's something that we need just to be, talking about and figuring out relative to how we make sure that we have enough police protection within our community as we've grown, as we'll continue to grow. And it is tough. That's not to say that the sheriff, I think, office has been a great opportunity and has provided a good service. And it's a challenging environment to provide law enforcement services. So I would just say I think it's going to be something we'll need to talk about going forward through the budgeting process and just figuring out how we can make sure that we have the law enforcement protection we need for our community.
So Sean, as I expressed to you and the mayor, I'm very supportive of the sheriff's department. So I don't want this to sound like I'm not supportive, but I feel like maybe we should take a little bit more time and look at all the issues, because I do feel like nationally there is a shortage, and this letter could appear that, you know, we're you know, willing to at all costs, and you know, I think it's well written. There's very specific amounts, but what I'm afraid of is a price war. I mentioned that. I think there's a lot of factors that we have to look at and maybe take some time to look at, and then maybe this is something that we want to do. I just feel like it's a little bit rushed, and that we need to look at the issue a little bit, wait for the wage study, for example, see what comes out of that, and just communicate with the other cities and see what they're feeling as well, and the county in general. I would hate to create a bigger problem and find ourselves in a bigger hole by creating that price war.
I was under the impression that we all agreed to the letter at least last time.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't realize, you know, that the sheriff's department was going to be here. I absolutely support them. I want full staffing. I want all of those things, but the realities in the market may prevent that. And so, as I did a little further research and looked at it a little closer, I just felt like maybe we need to take a little more time before we and look at it and make sure that we're doing the right thing. That'd be my only word of caution. And I don't know if any of the other council members have felt that way since, but I did reach out and express those concerns to the mayor and Sean and just, you know, some of the research that I've done. And
So
not that what I sent was the answer either. There was a lot. It was basically some articles that I'd read that said that this was basically a problem nationally, and that there might be other ways than just funding to solve these issues.
can you give us an idea of what some of those might have been?
Well, like in programs, and they would likely have costs too that would encourage recruitment. So basically taking a longer term view of it, and, you know, reaching out with the community and kind of getting a positive image of policing in general, so that people are more excited coming into the industry, and kind of developing that and working with law enforcement to do that, to encourage, because I think what we're seeing is there's a lack of new officers coming in, and that's part of the issue. And so it's not just a money issue. There's other issues. So I just wanted to maybe take a little more time to look at that, make sure that maybe there's other things that we need to add to the letter as a suggestion from our perspective after we do a little more research. Maybe it's not just funding. Maybe there's some other suggestions that we can come up with. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I hope that's not what it sounded like in my letter. But, and again, I'm a big fan of the sheriff's office. I think they provide a great service. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're doing the right thing.
I was just going to say, we we did receive your email, and I appreciate you looking into it. I think feedback is really good. I have, and I did respond back to you the best I could with what I had on there. I have a little different perspective on the letter. I want to send a letter to them, but it definitely needs to be to the commissioners. The one thing, I don't think this is a sheriff issue at all, a sheriff department issue at all. I believe that this is funding from the source and owner of the sheriff's department, which is Weber County. The thing that I have a difficulty with on this, and the letter's great, it says in here that it says, you know, it's basically comes down to, you know, it's our desire to have a fully staffed Weber County Sheriff's Office. Well, I think we all want that to happen, but how's it going to happen? And in the scenario that Councilmember Saunders presented, it's more of a little bit of a long game because you're trying to encourage youth and other people to get involved in policing through trying to encourage people to do certain things, and it's kind of a long process. If we wait for long periods of time, you know, we're going to continue to have more and more issues, I think, within the city. Because we're a big contractor out there, the biggest pretty much except for the unincorporated, we still need the funds to come from somewhere. And I think if you're a true partner with, because the county signs off on everything that happens within this situation with the sheriff's department. Our contracts go through and those are signed off by the commissioners. So I think the letter should really point towards the fact that where is the safety of public safety when it comes down to funding the contract that we have with 7 different cities, including West Haven. I think that it's easy to go to the cities and say, we'll just pay more money. But the fact is that we've been short for a long time. I think we've been short on officers a long, long time. Now, how does that impact the city? You know, we've had a lot of things. We just had an incident not too long ago on 5100. There were 5, possibly 6 sheriff department trucks there taking care of that accident. They are all over everything to get things taken care of when they're needed. But it's the things that when there are 19 people short, where we're really not having coverage as a city and not having things like, you know, having our pedestrian school crossings covered appropriately, or, you know, maybe we need this or that within the city, or speeding. An accident happened at an intersection because someone was speeding. So little things like that, plus not to mention where we're overworking the officers because we don't have enough. That becomes a burnout situation and people leave. But it's already listed on here, and I know one officer that works at Davis County part-time, you know, $10 an hour more. That's a lot. So I think it's important for this letter to include the fact that we need some assistance from the contracting side, and where is that funding coming from?
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, Mayor. You know, I don't doubt that they're looking at this issue as well, and they're wondering where they can come up with the funding and how they're going to do that. And so, and I think they're doing a wage study from what we've heard from Sean, and trying to figure out what they need. From a money standpoint, I think it would be wise of us to be able to maybe look at things in the county and offer suggestions of where they can pull those funds from. For example, we've heard a little bit about the shelter. You know, they're looking for more funding from the shelter, the animal shelter, because they've gone to a no-kill policy. And they're going to increase their staff. Well, that's what's proposed by quite a bit. And maybe we look at that and see if is that a policy or is that a voter initiative? Is that something that can be changed? Are there ways that we can save money there and put it towards law enforcement? So there's a lot of different things in there that I think we can look at and that we can work with the county on, and to give them basically constructive feedback. Here's some ideas. We've looked at your budget. we've looked at some proposed things, and we think these things are probably not as important as law enforcement. So let's pull from here and put it there, rather than we're just proposing this kind of blanket statement of we need to increase the fees, which we likely do. I'm not saying that we don't, but I'm just saying I think it's a more complicated issue, and that we need to look at all the avenues before. So that, we get suggestions from residents that are good suggestions, and sometimes they don't understand all the background and all the things that are trying to be done. And so that's what I'm saying is maybe we just pump the brakes, look at it a little closer, then write the letter, and maybe gather even more support from other cities. If we feel like I don't feel like I have a good handle on knowing everything about it. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, I think in talking with a lot of the cities, there's some concerns already, and I hate to push it back a year, for the study to get completed. I think we already know that about where they're at. I just think it's something that I think it would be appropriate to meet with the county and have a discussion about it. I think a few cities would love to do that. So I think the letter still should go out. I just think it should be directed a little bit more towards funding this as soon as possible and to coming up with some kind of funding for it. And that doesn't mean, because as partners with the sheriff department, we already have an outline that's set up to share in some of that cost. So when you're taking all 7 cities, for example, that's currently on there, and you're sharing that type of situation, we've got 6 other people to share that with. However, we also need more funding from the commissioners. You mentioned, the shelters. There's the shelters, we have the senior centers. Those are all, in a lot of the mayor's opinions, underfunded. So, I think there's some areas that we could maybe discuss and try and work out some things, but I don't know the county's budget and where they can cut things because we're focused on our city. But I'd like to have that discussion, and I'd like to see some action on that as soon as possible, because it does put our city in jeopardy if we don't have coverage for what we need. And I hope that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, I would just like to also say that I'm not comfortable waiting another year to wait and see that the county figure out what they're going to do with the sheriff's department. The fact that they're so understaffed now is concerning to me. And it's concerning to me primarily because I think our jobs as a legislative body is to ensure public safety, and we're dependent on the county to help us with that. I mean, if this was our own police department that we were funding, then we would be able to just make decisions today on how we do that or how we help them staff up. But we're depending on the county, we're depending on other cities, and I'm just not comfortable waiting a full year to try and get fully staffed at the sheriff's department.
Can I ask a question about the budgeting part of this? So when we are budgeting with Weber County and they come back and say, okay, this is how much it's going to be, are we budgeting for a fully staffed police department? Because if we are, then we're paying too much because they are not using all that we are paying them for employees. So how does that work as far as, wait a minute, you're being overpaid for the protection that you are providing us?
So again, I don't know all the details of it. However, I know that when the Sheriff Arbonne puts together the details of the financials for it, we have a quarterly meeting. We sit down and we talk about what's going to take place and what each city's responsibility will be. When it comes down to that goes back to the commissioners for approval, and they can approve it or not. But one of the situations is that we're still under a contract. We're sitting under a contract. Now, I think there's several years that I remember, and even up till, the last few years, we've been understaffed with it, and we've received a rebate or a refund for a certain amount. But what's the impact of that? Is it really, have we had more crime in the city because we haven't had coverage? Or, we don't know that impact. So that's a difficult thing to put a quantity to find out where we stand. So again, I think it's just something that I think the intent of the letter from a perspective that I was looking at, I think Sean did a great job putting this together for us. I just think we need to make sure that it's followed up by either a meeting or discussion to see where we can come up with funding so that it's not all put on the contract cities to pay for it. It's their contract, they're providing the service, and they should have sufficient officers to do so.
And they're also utilizing the service just as much as we are.
Well, I agree with that, and that's why I think it's important to look at everything, because if we just say, yeah, we're willing to pay more money to get more officers, and then the next city next to us, they have an officer shortage, and they have to do the same thing and pick them off from Weber County, and then we come up to that level, and there's still an officer shortage, then what's going to happen? The natural thing is, you're creating this atmosphere where you just got to pay more money to get more officers, and so it doesn't really solve it long term, maybe short term. And so I think we definitely need to be competitive, and right now it doesn't look like we are, but we want to be careful. I would think not to just create this situation where we come up to, so let's say the highway patrol, and then the highway patrol raises theirs and they pick them off again, and we're back at the shortage, and we really haven't gained anything.
I think
don't
that's
know if
going to
that
be the
makes
cost
sense.
of doing business, though. I think that is the way the world works, is that, the mayor and I were talking to the wife of a Weber County sheriff, and we were amazed to learn that he's working 2 different jobs because he can get paid more as a part-time temporary person somewhere else than he does here. And they are currently looking to move so that they can be paid. So, I totally agree that there might be another way to go about this. I think right now we are really in a precarious situation as far as our coverage. I would be okay with starting the conversation with this letter.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would say I wasn't really sure how to format the letter as far as the signature lines went specifically. And so I just included all the council members, not knowing exactly if that's how you wanted it to be included or presented. So maybe just keep that in mind if you have some alternative idea about how that should be formatted. You could certainly make any adjustments you need to.
Does the council feel like this letter's ready to go and send out, or would you like to?
I think I definitely want to send out a letter of support. I just wonder if there's some other things that we could include in it and make it a little bit broader to just say we recognize that there are shortages out there, and that there may be some other long-term solutions that we need to look at in addition to wage increases in order to address it long-term.
I would wonder if the sheriff's department's already looking into those things. I would guess that Sheriff Arbonne is probably already trying to.
And that's very, very
But-
possible, and I would like to understand that.
Sure, yeah.
Well, we do have a letter on the table if we want to move forward with it, or we can wait and tweak it a little bit if you'd like. It's up to you.
I am in favor of signing this letter and sending it in and calling it letter number 1, and to repeat it up with several others from different points of view.
Yeah, I'm fine with signing it as well.
Me too.
Councilmember Call.
I do think it's fine to send this out. I can see where Councilmember Saunders is coming from, and if, we can look into that, or if that's something that you're really passionate about and you look into that, or whomever. I don't know how that is to be directed, but I understand that. I don't think this is a, an end all, or this is what it's going to be. This is just a support. We're behind you, and we understand this is what the need will be. This is the information we have at the time, from that you had asked for. I mean, you asked for information to make a better projection, so I'm okay.
Yeah, I'd still love to add and we can do it via email too, but we need to get a meeting together with the county and have a discussion, I think, on that too. So, and find out where they stand with it, because we do support the sheriff's office for what they do for the city and how it's set up. I think they do a great job for us at this point, but we need to support them enough to keep the sheriff department running here. So overall, I'm ready for a motion on the letter if you'd like to move on that.
Does it require a motion, Amy?
To action, so, yeah.
Yeah.
I would move that we send this letter of support for wage increase for Weber County Sheriff employees.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed? We have a nay. Okay.
Yes, there's one.
So it passes on here, but thank you for that. All right, we'll move on to item number 10, action on resolution 40-2024, reimbursement agreement between Ivory Homes Development, LLC, and West Haven City for storm drain system improvement. Ed,
Good evening.
curious on this one?
I believe the city manager gave you a very succinct synopsis of the reason we're asking the council to consider this. If you want to go more into the background and the detail that I have in the staff report, I'd be glad to do so. Also, Greg Timothy from Ivory Homes is here also in case the council has any questions for him. But again, just to summarize quickly, we found an opportunity based on the Fairhaven development, an opportunity for us to, for the city to have an opportunity to provide additional capacity through what they need to do for their project now to address future development to the north of the site. A one-size upgrade in the proposed storm drain. It almost exactly mirrors the situation we had with the Sunset Farms development where the council approved a similar agreement.
Yeah, thank you. I hope everybody got a chance to read through it. It's a pretty good report and gives a lot of detail on what's going on with it. Any questions we can direct towards our engineer? No questions? Okay, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 40-2024, the reimbursement agreement between Ivory Homes Development LLC and West Haven City for storm drain system improvement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this action? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this. Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab,
Aye.
and Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you for that. Sorry we made you sit here all through that whole thing.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Ed, on that. Okay, we'll move on to our next item. Item 11, action on resolution 41-2024 to submit grant applications for ramp funding.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor, this has been an ongoing conversation that we've had over the course of several council meetings, and I think we're at a point where it's ready for your formal consideration and action through resolution. So what's being proposed is specific projects that that Sherry Bingham would pursue through applications to the county for ramp tax dollars. As you know, those are typically a 50-50 match, and I think these are all great projects for the city to pursue, and it's been a great source of funding for parks. And I would say I think it's on the ballot for this upcoming election for renewal. And so, we've been able to leverage our funds with this funding source to provide what I think is a great park offering to our residents and even beyond. As you know, parks are used by the community as a whole. So anyways, Sherry's here as well to answer any specific questions that you might have, and I think she's ready once you approve, to start the preparation and submission. I think that the deadline is January, so this will be helpful for her to be able to move forward with.
I don't know, that's a lot of time, Sherry. You sure?
Yeah,
You're
I think
used to working in lots shorter time frames.
it's January 12th, right? So I say we table until,
She works well under pressure, I've noticed.
I'd like to think about this a little more, maybe another 6-7 weeks.
is there any questions about any of the grants that are on here, or because we do have a little bit of time, but we want to try and get it wrapped up too. Any thoughts or questions about it?
I think it's a really comprehensive list, and it makes so much more sense when you have it written down like this for me, so thank you.
Everybody's good with the grants? Ready for a motion if there's no discussion?
I move that we
Sorry,
adopt,
go ahead.
I move that we adopt Resolution 41-2024 to submit grant applications for ramp funding.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this resolution? All right, we'll do a roll call on this. Councilmember Schwab.
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Councilmember Call.
Aye.
And Councilmember Dixon.
Hi.
And Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Sherry, for being here and taking care of that. Look forward to getting those grants. Item 12 on here, discussion. This is a discussion only for sidewalk inventory and possible funding sources to construct road and sidewalk improvements. I turn that over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, city staff put together a report, and it was really focused on additional funding resources. Last meeting, we talked about specific projects, and I think we still need to have those conversations. But I think at the last council meeting, you realized that in order to construct, you need to have construction dollars, and so I tried to highlight some existing funding sources that the city receives that's eligible for construction of sidewalks, and we are using them primarily, on roads. So I think on the second page, there's a heading that says existing funding sources, and I think that's a good place to start. And we do have the class. I always get, it's Class C? Is that Class B? Yeah, okay.
C, I'm sorry. A is state, B is county, C is local.
C, okay. I always hear it, B and C road funds, but C is our specific, or B?
B is county, C is city.
See, I still have a hard time. Is our allotment, and there's a formula that they derive our specific portion, and it is based on weighted miles, and to that end, we do update our lane miles every year, I believe, to UDOT, just to make sure that we are, maximizing the portion of the formula that we do have control over. It does amount to, I believe, at least for fiscal year 2025, it was 1.1 is what we anticipated. There's a graph in there that shows the growth of that, what we anticipate in future years, so you can get an idea. It is restricted for specific purposes, and I believe I highlighted the purposes as in the memo so that you could see how it would relate to themes outside of the travel lanes, specifically. So the pedestrian portion of it. The other item is the transportation sales tax. It's an existing tax that was enacted by the voters, and the city does receive a portion of it. It is eligible for traffic and pedestrian improvements as well. That funding source is right now estimated to be $626,000 for this current fiscal year. So we did budget. I think it was $250,000 for sidewalks, and in the existing budget, we have about $100,000 in expenses already that's been approved for improvements along 2700 West. You might recall there was, I think, four lots that needed sidewalk to be improved, and it was a little more costly than just constructing the sidewalk because these were existing lots that were landscaped and had improvements, and so there was some restoration and damages that the city included in that project for the homeowners. So that's the existing, and Ed is I think well versed in, as you know, in some of those transportation funding sources, so he could certainly add to that summary.
Well, I guess my question would be, if we're planning on this 1.1, where have we already earmarked it for?
Because Scott typically allocates most of that for repaving and resealing and chip seal crack seals, and he has his ongoing maintenance schedule. So the focus has been on maintaining the condition of the roads.
So that 1.1 would only be used for that at this point?
At this point, yes. And you'd have to speak to Scott directly. I know that he tries to build up a surplus in the anticipation that there may be a road reconstruction section or things like that. But that's part of the public works budget, and I'm not as familiar with the maintenance requirements that he knows.
Sorry.
Oh.
Do we know how much it would cost for, if we decided on each one of these projects, how much we would need?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was
we
in
did.
last week's report.
Right, so, and I can't remember what the report said. Do you have the total that was? I'm sorry.
Well, the projects, I don't have that, but I can certainly, email it out again to the council.
I have it at home. I
We
just
can
didn't
look
bring
at
it with me. but-
which
okay.
projects that would fit within that existing budget.
Yeah.
I should say available funds. And I think like the city manager says, there has to be a shift in emphasis then from maintaining the roads to improving the rights of way in general, including, sidewalk.
And the transportation sales tax, is that earmarked at this point for anything?
It would be
Yeah.
in the public works budget. I don't know.
And I can, I'm sorry. I felt like there's maybe a lot more information yet to come, and I do anticipate that this is an ongoing conversation. But I definitely have the budget detail that I can provide to you and show you where it was allocated this current year.
And I think, depending on the project, unfortunately, it's not just necessarily a simple project of just adding sidewalk.
Right.
Generally, there's going to be some ancillary issues. And if you put a sidewalk, you're typically going to have to put a curb and gutter in. And that would be in addition to any utility improvements or piping of sloughs or things like that. We're not talking about projects that are requiring actual widening of the road. At least that'd be the most effective, I think, at this point.
I think last time when we had our meeting, we asked for you to look up some funding sources, which this
And
is
this
is
is.
doing just this.
Right, exactly.
But I think too, there is a lot of there's a lot of things that we could draw from on here, and I think this is going to require some time to go through some of this. I mean, reading through it and everything, I thought, wow, this is really great, but, you know, it even includes the property tax, the good times of the property tax, which, you know, helps us understand what the overall would be, you know. if
I
we
should
had-
probably add, Mayor, that some of that funding actually goes towards our matches for some of the WACOG grants also. So we'd
Which
have
is
to- we'd have-
substantial.
Yes, so we would have to back that out of whatever the accumulated amounts are in those funds.
That's the transportation and the BNC you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, some of it's allocated to general, some may come out of impact, but a lot of it can come from there because it's design related.
So like just in the pipeline right now, we have the 5100 that's about 322, somewhere in there.
Correct.
We'll call it 350.
And then we have the connector roads, 33 to 36 and 18 to 21. I don't recall offhand, but they're in the high hundreds of thousands each. 2,700 we have now that we were working on, so there'll be some funding still that has to be allocated to that. And then I guess we have to anticipate the applications we made this year to WACOG, because that would commit us to those matches also.
Yeah. And we have our intersections too that are coming up too that we got approved. So those were 250 apiece too, right?
Yes.
So it adds up. I mean, it's a lot of money too. I mean, it's
Goes-
great to get
yes.
grants too, but it does add up.
And unfortunately, at least in terms of the impact fees, we're not seeing the replenishment that we've had in the last couple of years either. So
Right.
Class C, that's existing, that comes from the state, is that?
Comes from the state, yes. And as the city manager said, it's based on, you start with the basic number of road miles we have, and then the state has some weighting factors, and then they allocate it proportionally among all the cities. And that should be, like as the city manager said, that should be a steady source of revenue. And I don't know whether they actually increase the formulas going year to year or how they do it, but that's pretty much I'd say one that's probably most predictable each year. Sales tax obviously can change.
And do we have all that already allocated for these road projects?
We'd have,
Pretty much?
I can't say how much. I don't know what the current overall balance is. We can certainly do that accounting and let you know. I don't want to speak out of turn. I think a lot of it is probably accounted for based on, at least last year, the road improvements, the surface improvements, things like that, and 2,700 and some of the other preliminary work we've done on the other projects. But I think, again, I'm speaking for Scott, and I don't know exactly, but I know he tried to hold back every year, not spend the whole budget every year. So I'd have to go back and check what he had spent in terms of road improvements versus what we got, and then take out the cost we need for current projects. And I think they play that quarterly. I think the
Yes.
state pays us quarterly for
The
that.
distribution, yes.
What other questions?
Are there any other funding sources that aren't listed here?
Well, we did put the future, possible sources of revenue that that the state legislature's authorized, but the city hasn't fully implemented.
Anything from the county or that's additional that's not in here?
I don't believe so. I think, in some ways, I feel like the county has, the voters of Weber County have voted for optional, sales tax dollars to fund transportation. And I think they've enacted really all the optional forms, if I understood correctly. So I don't feel like there's any other sales tax opportunities that I'm aware of. And funding sources, I think the two funding sources that are used for general governmental services that the city does not currently have enacted all the way completely is the municipal energy tax and property tax. And I would say if anyone reads this report in the public, I mistakenly said that, we were proposing a property tax increase, which is not the case. Obviously, that we're just discussing, what revenue sources are available. And so that was just a cut and paste error from another document. But at any rate, you can see, and I think there's some good information just to give, some context and understanding of of how and what these funding sources, could generate, and the possibilities attributed to them.
It's funny to see the impact of slowing the flow of growth.
Yeah.
It does really impact the city overall, to the chagrin of some and to the glee of others. It depends. I think there's just a lot of the energy tax has been something that most cities I talk to anyway, they love that tax, and it seems to go over fairly well. Not great, but they can implement it at any rate up to that 6%. But it seems to be pretty popular, and that's brought some extra funding, and we already have it actually in place. So, from 1998. So, it's something to think about, but I appreciate you putting this together because it was eye-opening to see what the amounts are in more detail, and then we can drill down if there's something we decide to do and decide to move forward with. But I know I think our goal was that we were trying to set was, can we find funding to help us with our sidewalk projects that are out there? And we didn't want to wait for grants, even though we can still do that, but it was more of an urgent matter to try and see what we could do to get things taken care of. But I think we do have a couple options out here. I don't know if we're ready to, of course, make any decisions, which we can't tonight, but, be thinking about it and see what you think about this for future. I don't know if we need to put something on even sooner, like the next agenda, or if we want to wait a little bit and have a discussion about it at the next meeting as well. But is there any other questions or comments about that?
Just might be good to see, the proposed sidewalk projects and the cost next to, what we're seeing here. I know we have that from a last meeting, but maybe side by side.
And I think that the issue the council was looking at last time is how do we prioritize the projects?
Right.
Right,
And
yep.
I've begun to do some initial research into that, and I haven't found anything that's a specific
There we go.
way to evaluate that. There are different ways you can use quantitative measures like pedestrian counts and vehicle speeds, or you can prioritize again based on areas or gaps. There are a whole different way, and hopefully we'll be able to put together some kind of matrix for the council to look at and see how we can evaluate this in different ways.
I think that right now we are prioritizing anything that gets kids to school. So that would be our number one priority right now and then, move on to the other lesser
Yeah,
priority
but then
projects.
the second part of that becomes, okay, do we do sections which are easier to construct versus do we pick a longer section that may not be, so there still will be some nuances and some evaluations that would have to be.
Okay.
This is how you want to spread the money and get the most for the value.
Mr. Mayor, could I just, you touched upon, there's two additional funding sources that we talked about, the municipal energy tax, and as the mayor mentioned, legislatively, that ordinance has been enacted. Administratively, it hasn't been implemented, and that can occur at any time, depending on how you would, direct, me as the city manager to move forward. And I say that in the sense that we would send that ordinance to the tax commission. I think there's a 60 to 90 day notice period before it would actually be implemented. So that gives the tax commission time to give the Dominion Energy and Rocky Mountain Power time to administratively implement and start collecting that tax. So that's a tax that can be implemented, fairly soon. The other, that we've talked about is a property tax, and I think you understand that, that goes through a process, and that likely wouldn't even be able to be considered until next August, just with the way that you have to go through the truth in taxation and the certification of just the whole property tax collection system. So that's a year away from even really being able to be considered and acted upon, if that was something you desired to consider.
All right, my turn for opinions. I do not think that we should touch the transportation tax or the BNC funds to fund sidewalks. I don't think we need to have our city dilapidate while we're trying to figure out safety issues. I would, however, be in favor of going forward with the energy tax. And I would like something crafted in such a way that the ordinance or resolution says that this is only for sidewalks. And it provided a narrative and strategy on doing so, so the residents understand what this is for. There's been enough outcry that this is something we needed to take action on. It has been acted on, and I think this is something we can use right now to make this happen. I would like to see that sidewalks, the priority is to ensure one sidewalk on one side of the street at a minimum. I'm not saying we go widen every road and put sidewalks on both sides. I think that's a waste of money at this point because we do not have the property tax. But that's the direction I would like to see this go.
On the, you're talking about there being a resolution stating that that the energy sales tax only goes to sidewalks, and you're talking about amending the current ordinance?
Not the current ordinance. It would be, I guess I would lean on Sean for this, as far as budgeting. So a council or two councils down the road come in and say, hey, look at all this money that's coming in from this energy tax. We're gonna start using this money for X, Y, Z. I want them to have to actually amend an ordinance that we put into place that clearly stated, this is why we did this is what it's for. And then their names will go on record that they voted to amend it and change the way that those funds went.
Then you're talking about amending an ordinance,
If that's
because
the
we already
case,
have the ordinance.
correct.
So we would have to amend the one we already have.
Let me think a little bit about this. I mean, there's ways. I mean, there's two issues that I think Councilmember Swap's bringing up, and one is sort of binding future councils, and
It would be binding them, and they'd have the ability to change it, but it would be documented, and they'd have their signatures on that ordinance modification or change.
yeah. Well, let me look into that a little further to figure out how best to do it. I mean, there's several different thoughts that I have, but it'll probably be clear if I have the opportunity to think about it, talk to Ryan Childs, our city treasurer, and Amy, and we can come up with some different options to accomplish what you're wanting to consider.
Did you find out how much we had in sidewalks? Was there a total?
It's about 3.36 million.
3.36?
That's what I added up. It's a little over 3.36 million.
So if we have
3.37.
1.2 million per year in energy tax, and it's gonna escalate as the bills go up, I mean, in 3 years, we could tackle that list without passing the tax. So, just a thought.
Well, that sounds easy. No, I think it's a good plan. I think that how does the council feel about the energy tax? I mean, I think we can discuss it a little bit. You feel like that's something you would want to implement?
I wouldn't unless there was an understanding of what we need these funds for in the future. Like you're putting on a tax for this specific project rather than the city has these needs, we're in debt or whatever it may be, and that's why we need a tax, to me. So I would rather use the transportation funds because I don't feel like our roads are going to fall apart in that amount of time and build
We
At
are
least not
fortunate.
this year.
and
Most of our
build
roads are fairly new.
and build a sidewalk, right? We
Right.
can't build all 4 of these that were on this list from 2 weeks ago. I would really want to see where we would need, like, we've never struggled. We haven't needed the tax, so why would we implement a tax to pay for these sidewalks?
I think my only suggestion would be is possibly trying to speed up the process, to try and get some things done. But I worry about just trying to get like the project like on 1800 started, not just putting sidewalks in to put sidewalks in, but to do the project and get those started, so that we actually have a finished project when we're done.
You mean like the realignment of the road?
Not the
what are you
realignment
talking about?
over on 1800. That one,
Just sidewalk?
we're going to do the boulevard basically eventually one day from
From
18
20.
to 21st.
Right.
So, but up at the top of that, build the
think-
project so that it's going to be
But I think
permanent.
that's property being held up. Like, that's the issue now, is not like we don't have the funding, it's that we don't have the land.
That's all true. However, you know, that top of the road, if we get some project to work on that, rather than we already talked about putting in temporary, you know, things and then having to tear it out. Why do we want to spend $75,000, I think was the topic, on that road just to go back in and tear it out?
Right.
So I think, I mean, this is a complicated thing. We probably can't settle in one session here, obviously. We've had a couple of talks about it, but I think they're both good ideas to utilize. I do think as well, the city probably could get by with some things. I don't think all of it. You know, I do see some pretty major cracks in some of the roads out there that are quite wide that maybe need some filler, but it seems like we don't fill those cracks. We put the coating over the top and go from there and hope for the best. I think there's some things we could do a little bit better on those, but I think we could probably try and cut back at least on some of those items if we had a good discussion with the Public Works Director. You know, what can we cut back? Because if we don't involve him in it, then I don't know. I just feel like we're overstepping a little bit to see what really is going to work and really get an honest opinion and direction on where we're going with that. But I do, you know, hey, we all have to pay taxes too, and I don't want to implement any taxes that the city doesn't need. But we're talking about a need right now about trying to get sidewalks put in. So that would be the purpose. And I know the attempt trying to put a property tax in last time was probably less than what the public anticipated to get something proportionate out of it. But
Yeah, I don't think we're
it
ready.
didn't work, you know. But we're not proposing that. We already have this. We can look back into 1998 and say we haven't collected any of this since then, and we could implement that, and it would probably be worthwhile.
This has got a lot of moving parts that I think we're going to have to sit down and look at very carefully. And
And I'm willing to stay here till it.
I am not.
But as long as we keep
have
it
enough
moving a little bit
information.
and think about it, because I think we've all got some good ideas, and that's why we're a council. We just need to try and drive that together and talk with our city manager and with our department heads to see if there's some.
Yeah, maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe you don't increase the tax as much as you could, but you pull from other areas without letting our roads go to pot, you know. But, you know, it's, again, it is a public safety issue, so it's important.
I agree.
And I think the public will probably understand that, you know, once they're all brought up. Certainly, there's certain residents that understand it right now, but I think it's probably a justifiable expense. But I'm with Carrie. I want to be cautious and make sure that we're, you know, looking at all the angles and do it the right way. Same thing, same way with the, you know, the police officers. I absolutely, I don't want to be the only name not on that support. The only reason I said no is because I think we can look at the issue and add more, you know, to it, and just make sure we're addressing all the items. And this again is a complicated issue, and so.
So what do we think the next step is on this process? What would you like to move forward to? What's the next step?
I think it makes sense to have a discussion with Public Works. If we're talking about pulling some of that funding, which is obviously part of the discussion, then we need to have a better understanding of how that impacts the city and the roads before we make any sort of decision on taking some of that money.
So it might be good to ask them how long they would need to prepare something for that, and then bring it to a work session is what I would think. And
I
then,
wonder if our city manager, between getting people together, could put a report together for us or give us some written
Yeah.
information about it. Would that
Absolutely.
be easier, or do you feel like you need live questions answered?
I think the report would be great.
Yeah.
And you got it in writing? Would that be possible?
Oh, absolutely. Maybe if I could have a meeting or two to do that, and maybe a PowerPoint presentation might work well. I think one of the things that, and Ed could correct me, but usually I think the city's been documenting the life of the road, the life remaining in the road, and so that might be a good indicator of how well our roads are. So that's something that I'd like to figure out and bring to your attention in the future. I think the other thing that really is critical, and we touched upon it. In fact, Councilperson Dixon mentioned it through the last budgeting process. Is I think the next approach and improvement in our budgeting is capital projects, and really figuring out what projects have we committed and the funding sources, and that might not be easily done between now and the next meeting, but it's something that I did talk to Ryan Childs about and Amy Davies, and it's something that I think we need to work on, and that'll give you, I think, a clear picture of and allow you to start to identify priorities, because
Works together.
yeah. So we might not, we're not going to get to that point in the next meeting or two, but I'll do my best to give you some more insight into resources and just continue the conversation.
And can I, the Public Works has put together a very voluminous road inventory. And I've been working with Scott, to your point, Councilmember. Maybe we have to change the paradigm, the way we maintain roads, where typically we're gonna pick a whole stretch of a certain road. But maybe if we just target segments, which may be in more disrepair than others, we don't have to necessarily do, a whole stretch of roadway, and we can just hit the bad spots over a recurring period too. So there's different strategies that from the Public Works side that we can consider also.
Well, and I think that we just have these critical sidewalk issues right now. I mean, we're always going to have sidewalk issues, but it seems these are more critical than what we're going to be seeing in the future. So maybe not. Maybe there'll be more schools and we're still, but for right now, we know that these are.
Just a question on the energy tax. If we haven't implemented it up to this point, but it's in place, can we kind of sunset it? Say we put it in place for 3 years and then it goes back to the way it was?
You're asking, like, could you do that legislatively?
Well,
Been a tax for 3 years and then, yeah.
yeah, go back, so that, because obviously we haven't implemented it to this point. So if we do implement it, my question is, can we just set that for a term?
Yes, I would believe you could. I mean, I think you would, adopt a new ordinance and send that to the tax commission, and, that would change, the percentage to something less than what what you first, what was elected in 1998. It could be zero. And at that point, obviously, the tax would be no longer collected.
Another idea.
Called a nostalgia bill. We could send through.
Ed, do you know when the next safe sidewalk application is?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that.
Okay,
But remember, they top out usually about $150,000.
sure.
So,
But
I'm saying
that's-
I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. It's just not obviously
Right.
in the
Yeah.
budget area we're talking about.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so next steps, we'll get some more information on some of these items and we'll have some more discussion about it, if that's okay with the council. All right, that discussion is over. Item 12, we'll move to item 13, adjournment.
Move
to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in
That's
favor,
really
say
hard to
aye.
beat, Kim.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I want to know who got credit for that motion.
I'm not the determining factor.
Emily's in charge. She decides.
Hey, Kim, I was going to mention to you, so I saw